This is a story of a murder trial that occurred in the very young stages of our country. It occurred in the city of Northampton, Massachusetts, one of the most liberal cities in the state to this day. It concerned two men who were charged with murder, and the only guilt they carried was that they were not from the United States and they were Irish. The two men's names were Domonic and James Hallligan. It was a sad day, the day that they were put on trial, because there was absolutely no evidence, and it was just unbelievable. Life was hard. People lived in houses with no heat, no hot water. It was very cold, lots of snow, and they had just gotten their independence from England. Most people in the town were Anglo-Saxon and Protestant. Some Irish immigrants had come in, but most Irish immigrants were still Protestant. This is what happened on the trial and what happened to the two men. On November 10th, 1805, a body of a man was found along the road of what is now the Massachusetts Turnpike. The turnpike was dirt then, and most people walked. Dominic Daley and James Hallligan were on that road going from Boston to Connecticut, possibly to the New York line. The case begins as many wrongful convictions begin, with a particularly outrageous crime. What happened is a young farmer named Marcus Lyons was found in Wilmington, Massachusetts, in a creek. He was on his way to his home in Connecticut from New York. He had been shot through the chest and his brains battered out of his skull. The motive was robbery. In the absence of any evidence, some witnesses with vague reports of strangers on the fatal turnpike furnished tissue for an entire theory of the case. And through the misrepresented focus of tunnel vision, the strangers became Irishmen, and the Irishmen became Dominic Haley and James Hallligan. The case in the court would comprise of 24 witnesses. Now, one of the problems was when they had heard that there had been a murder. One of the men who would be a justice at the court was up for re-election. And so he put out a $500 bounty to anyone that could find the two men that had murdered this man. So $500 back then was 5 years' salary to many people. So they set up a posse, and they went down the turnpike, and through talking to people as they walked, they found these two Irishmen which fit their needs perfectly and brought them back to Massachusetts. The trial they were held before the trial for a period of 5 months without any access to a lawyer, any rights, anything. It was not a fair way. And they were just two strangers who had been on a public road the same day as the victim. And all of them were strangers in the country. So they just fit perfect. The other problem was, because of no forensics during that time, they couldn't even prove that James O'Halloran or Mr. Hilly had even been in the area the day he died. They didn't know the date of death. And so they brought it to trial, and they brought one of their witnesses, who was a gun salesman, who said he had sold 2 guns to 2 Irishmen. Now, he couldn't identify either man, and so they went on to the next witness. Next witness was a young boy who said that he had seen 2 Irishmen near the man that had been murdered, but he could not identify either one of the men. Then there was testimony that the men had the same types of blankets and some money that the farmer had had. But the judge instructed the jury of 12 to dismiss such claims because they were too vague. But the friendless immigrants, court-appointed attorneys, Francis Blake, who had been tasked with the first capital case of his life, a bare 48 hours before the trial opened, made a vehement, eloquent, and futile address to the jury against this liberal, inhumane prejudice closing around the throats of his clients. Despite the presence of Jean-Louis de Chavez, who risked his own life and remained in jail because he was given no roof in the town, things went down from there. It was testified that the priest would even lie about what had been said, as the Catholic Church would not tell what was said in confession. To the dismay of the people in Northampton, he gave the first Catholics communion while the men were in jail. And then they had the other problem that there was a folklore that cropped up to the effect that a local man had given a deathbed confession exonerating the hanged Irishman. But that did not seem to matter, as they were both found guilty and hung. It was just an awful travesty of justice. Unfortunately, it took 170 years for Governor Michael Dukakis to exonerate both men.